Okay, well,
See, they've hurt you deep inside, and they bruise your soul, and they've burnt you into oblivion, pulling you down to hate. I'll choose to stay. I'll see no evil, hear no evil. I'll feel no evil, fear no evil. I'll taste no evil, fear no evil. I'll taste no evil, no evil, no evil, no evil.
Hi everyone, welcome to Rehearsing Freedoms. I'm Rebecca Delsall, the Co-Executive Director of Healing Justice London, and we create capacity for transformation through the lens of community health and healing. And we're delighted to be hosting the Rehearsing Freedoms Festival. It's a month-long festival of community health, movement building, arts and culture, and we're now heading into week 4. And our title, Rehearsing Freedoms, is inspired by the work of Ruth Wilson Gilmore on abolition. Gilmore describes abolition as life in rehearsal, and we're coming together to precisely that, to rehearse the new social order that we want, rehearse bringing the new social order into being. And so with Rehearsing Freedoms, we've been seeking to collectively envision and call in the futures that we want. And our holistic program has been really focused on how we restore our agency collectively, how we nourish our joy, how we sustain our energies, and how we move together towards collective liberation. And so it's within that framing that I'm particularly delighted to introduce today's conversation, which has been co-hosted with Project Tallowa, Mobilising Money. And it feels very much like bringing kin together for this conversation. So we have Mariah Lassarai, Derek Bardwell, Stephanie Broby, and Vanessa Thomas, and some of the HDL folks, Alex and Fazana as well, helping us with tech, and Richard as well from Rainbow Collective. And together we're going to really have an intimate conversation about moving money and what that really means. While we're holding on to the fact that the revolution will not be funded, we also do want to explore what is the role of philanthropy in reparative justice, resourcing the racial justice work that we're working towards. But we also want to go beyond that and think about what resources we have amongst ourselves and how we can sustain and resource movements and build radical alternatives. So before we start, I'm going to hand over to my colleague, Fazana Khan, co-director of Healing Justice, who's going to ground us and center us for today's discussion.
Hello, folks. Welcome. I'm going to invite us into a centering practice. And one of the reasons at Healing Justice London, we like to begin with practices and centering is that we know there is no such thing as a neutral practice, that we're all practicing something all the time. And either we're practicing towards liberation or away from it. So what would it mean for us to practice on purpose and practice on purpose towards the collective liberation that we are all calling in for and committed to, especially during these times where we've got a long fight? And what are the practices that we want to grow capacity for? So this particular practice that I'll be sharing is one that's been passed on to us by one of our partners, Stacey K. Haynes, and it's a centering practice that supports us to really try and metabolize some of the values we want to have lived through our bodies. And so we're going to center in 4 dimensions, and that might sound a bit unusual, but hang tight. And within each dimension, there's a principle that we want to embody, that we want to have lived through us, and that under pressure, under an inserted uncertainty, that we are able to go and reflex from that space, that those things are lived from us much more naturally, and that we can be more choiceful. And so everything that I'm sharing is completely invitational. And if at any point it feels like it's agitating for you, please stop. If you can sense an amendment, try it differently, or just enjoy it in a listening capacity. Okay, so hopefully some of you are going to try this on with me. I'm going to invite you first to just bring your awareness to your center, which is just below your belly button. And you can place one hand here, or just bring your awareness towards this space. And as we're doing that, you can close your eyes or keep it open. If you're someone who likes to go inwards by closing your eyes, encouraging you to try and keep your eyes open. What does it mean for us to connect whilst also resourcing from inside? And so as we're bringing our awareness towards our center, we're going to start to notice or sense or feel our lower body. And sensing and feeling the weight of our lower body. Maybe the heaviness in our legs or our feet. And as we're feeling downwards or sensing our lower body, we're going to start to center in the principle of dignity. And that's our inherent worthiness, non-negotiable, and the worthiness of all life and living things, including the more than human. And as we're pushing down or feeling the heaviness, the weight of who we are, our matter, our dignity, and the dignity of all life and living things, seeing if you can start to extend that upwards, maybe heightening a little. So many of us from we're marginalized, we have to collapse, make ourselves smaller, shrink. So many of us are collapsing to protect our heart from the collective grief and heartbreak. So seeing if you can take a moment to just be a little bit more open-hearted, chest open a little bit more, extending upwards, heightening, and starting to really deepen in that dignity. And as we heighten, we're going to start to widen. You might have your arms beside your side body. You might be sensing your rib cage take a deeper and fuller breath, or the warmth of your arms beside you. When we center in our side body, we're centering in width and connecting to the principle of connection and interdependence. Who's at our sides? Who are we in solidarity with? Who's moving with us? And just bringing them beside us and seeing if we can sense or feel them, including all of us on this call, trying to reach and sense and feel outwards in connection and interdependence. And now bringing our awareness towards our back body, we want to center in depth. And our back body is our space of support. It's the prayers and protection of our chosen ancestors, the freedom fighters, the movements, those that have brought us to this moment, and sensing and feeling into their support, their prayers, as we start to bring our awareness towards our front body. And our front body is our space of purpose. Our purpose is what we long for, what we're calling in. And that's our shared commitment of collective liberation, justice, the liberation of Palestinians and all oppressed people, and anything specific that you are longing for and calling in. And now we're going to try and hold all of those parts together, heightening, elongating in dignity, widening in connection and interdependence, deepening with support and purpose. And just taking a moment to sense and feel all of those dimensions holding you. And if there's anything you don't want to take out into this session, just send it to the earth, shake it out. And I'm going to send it back to Rebecca. Thank you.
Thanks, Fazana. I'll hand over to you, Mirai.
Ancestral greetings, everyone. And Fazana, thank you for bringing us into the space in that way. It felt right that you start us off in terms of the centering practice. So welcome, everyone. We are mindful that it's Sunday and some people might be at home having their rice and peas and chicken. Other people might be like, actually, I just want to sleep early. I don't want to get on a call about mobilizing money. And also we are grateful for the tech and that this conversation is being recorded so that you might watch it in the future, because here we're also all about time traveling. So we have an amazing group of human beings here, warriors, dreamers, wisdom keepers, troublemakers, and so forth. I will introduce myself properly in a moment, but I want to just bounce through the space and have folk just say who they are and like what they're up to. So I'm going to start with my good sis Vanessa, and Vanessa, if you can then just bounce onto someone else.
Thanks, Marai, and thank you, Fazana. That was a really beautiful way to enter the space. Greetings, everyone. I'm Vanessa Thomas, a Londoner via Sierra Leone. I kind of spend my time between London and Accra. I come wearing a few different hats, and I know that we'll get into all of them. So to keep it brief, I currently work at the Black Feminist Fund. They are a one-of-a-kind fund resourcing Black feminists all across the globe. The thread which we'll hopefully pick up when we're speaking is that in all my roles, I'm basically, like Issa Rae said, rooting for everybody Black. So where Black People Day, I'm going to be rooting for them. And by default, I think this means that I'm dreaming of and rehearsing a world which is free from the patriarchal white supremacist binds that are quite literally choking us all. I'm really, really honored to be holding space with all of my faves. Rehearsing Freedoms has been such a long time coming, so really big ups to the entire team for this sacred space. I'm going to pass it to Stephanie.
Thank you so much, Vanessa. Really wonderful to be in this space and in conversation with siblings, and yeah, just really wonderful. Feeling very full, particularly after that grounding. I would describe myself as a practitioner that's seeking to mobilize resources to accelerate the just transition to a regenerative economy. Having spent a decade in the city as a private wealth lawyer, I'm now working at the intersection of private wealth and social justice, really seeking to leverage the capacity of private capital in service of the just transition, using a variety of resist and build practices and strategies. And I guess within that work, within that resist and build framing, I feel that I'm rehearsing a lot of death doulaing, and as well as being a birthing doula, as a lot of the work that I do involves composting a dying system as we seek to not just build something new, but to build something new and to emancipate that which is already there, actually. So I'm going to hand over to Derek.
Thanks, Stephanie. This is family right here. And I'm grateful because every single person that's on this screen right now has absolutely held me in the last few years. There has been some serious times where I thought I'm going crazy, and there's many a time that I might be on the phone to someone and saying, yo, you're not crazy, it's not you. But the people that I go to, they're on this screen right now. They're the people that, tell me that I'm not going crazy. Well, a little bit, but not crazy. Derek, I'm a dad. I'm also a son to two Jamaican parents who are in their 80s. So I'm right in the middle of the midlife sandwich with, being with elderly parents and young kids. And that's really important, because I think as someone that does philanthropy advice, you end up in so many spaces where you're actually dehumanized, and the way that you are treated is as, I don't know, an antagonist, or you're treated, and I've been in so many of these spaces. I worked out that I'd done close to 100 talks and various things in the last few years. And you're in those spaces and you realize that you're actually dehumanized a lot of the time in those spaces. And what's happening in those spaces is you are there to create safety and comfort for those with wealth, those with privilege, and all of that. And what gets lost? It gets lost that I'm a dad and I'm also a son. So that's what I am. And that's more of what I will be going forward. That's more of what I am rehearsing in those spaces. I'm not there yet, but I'm certainly rehearsing that piece that starts to prioritize my safety moving forward. And I'll hand to Marai.
Thanks, bro. Thank you all. Rebecca, do you want to say a little bit more about who you be in the space? Because we had that initial introduction, but I feel like it'd be juicy to hear a little bit more about the Rebecca person.
Yeah, I can. I think I'm going to echo Derek, because I always start with an academic sort of introduction, but actually I think how I would want to describe myself is as a mum to two gorgeous, lively 9-year-old twins, which really does centre who I am. But my background is I worked for many years in philanthropy, running a global racial profiling project before came to Healing Justice. And the missing piece for me was always the focus on healing, both internally for the team, but also for the people that we were working with. As well as working operationally, we were doing a lot of work, but never with a focus on healing and the importance of people needing to recognize trauma, people needing to be empowered to have the space to be able to dream, to be able to build. It very much felt like it was kind of crisis support. And so I moved to work with Healing Justice, and then just beyond grateful for getting to know Fasana and the team and what that's brought to me. But it's also allowed me to see the very different side of being on the receiving end of philanthropy, and the dehumanization that, having sat for many, many times on the other side, knowing it wasn't right, but it's a very different side when you're to be on. And so I'm really welcoming this discussion. And as Derek said, I'm so grateful to be here with the team, and I've learned so much from them. And they've been the people that have kept me going over the years. So just big up to everyone and lots of love.
Oh my God, this is like, I just wish we were sitting around the dining table. I mean, I'm vegan, but you all could have your chicken if you wanted to. But like, I wish we were sitting around the table okay, we're gonna create a nice round table vibration anyway because of this family. So just to introduce myself and say a little bit about Project Halawa as well. So my name is Mara. I describe myself as a Black feminist time traveler and troublemaker, doula for radical Black imagination. And I have a tattoo on my arm, which is like 7 spirals. And it's about 7 generations of accountability. And it was really beautiful hearing Pat McCabe speak last week precisely about like our positioning and our placement when we think about 7 generations of accountability. And sometimes I'm in that role of who I rose from, like who I ascended from, and sometimes I'm in the role of like, okay, what we doing for 7 generations into the future. And like, so I'm always moving between those spaces. I'm a mama, I'm a granny, I'm a partner, I'm a scholar, I'm an educator, and like I'm just overall mischief maker. And I am joyfully a member of Project Talawa, of our collective sisterhood of 7 rooted. I love the fact that it's 7. Fazana and I both have a thing about the number 7. So sisterhood of 7 rooted in our communities and in our movements, and really kind of always giving thanks for our ancestors. Like we really are attempting to rehearse, and we are attempting to be in the practice of allowing ancestral wisdom to come through us. So like us as the vessels, and I don't mean that to evangelize, but just really like who are we in service to and what are we in service to? And that really feels like what we are doing at Project Talawa. So we are an emerging Black feminist resourcing and community initiative, and we're based here on the islands of the Disunited Kingdom, but like our work isn't all about this location. That's just the geography. We're led by and for Black/global majority women who have been minoritized in the geopolitical North. And we say geopolitical rather than the global North. Happy to explain later. So we basically are in service to Black women, gender expansive folk, but we are like deliberate in our centering of Black African and African heritage women and girls and gender expansive people. And again, we'll talk about why, although our work is focused on Black and global majority folk more broadly, why we center Black African and African heritage folk. So that's a little bit about me. I'm just going to then say for folks online or who may be watching this like in the future, just a little bit about how we're going to be in conversation today. So or grounding or energy today is really about rehearsal, practice, time travel. Like we are coming into this as folks who know some stuff and folks who are always on learning some stuff. This is experimentation, right? Like we're not coming into this like we have got it sorted. It's a space of collaboration, collective voice, honoring our individual and collective journeys. And so in this space, we're doing our specific thing, but we are in circle together. We're thinking about how we got here. We're thinking about where we are, what we're doing, what we could be doing. And we're also thinking about what we're dreaming, hoping, and working towards. And when we were prepping for this conversation, one of the things that came up really quickly is we can't be in a conversation about mobilizing money without recognizing like the broader context of the colonial project and the way that we are really in the impact of that now. So we really want to honor and like pay attention to not just the brutal realities of what is happening in Palestine right now, but we want to speak to DRC, Democratic Republic of Congo, Sudan, Rojava, Haiti. Like we want to acknowledge that there is a context, there's a reason why we are the ones in this conversation right now and why we're going to come at this in the way that we're going to come at this. So just to offer that as grounding. As we're speaking, we're going to explain just for, I don't want to say explain like in a patronizing way, but we will say what we mean when we say colonization, and we will say what we mean when we talk about movement, and we will say what we mean when we talk about philanthropy, which originally apparently was meant to be all about friendship and love, which doesn't feel like what it is right now, but that's calming it. We'll get there. So that's what we're here to do. And we have some prompts that we're each going to move through. And the first prompt that we're starting with is for each of us, which is like, what are you holding right now? What are we holding right now? So Stephanie, maybe you could start us off and then just like move it around the space.
Yeah, sure. When I think about that question, like, what am I holding right now? The first thing I think about is, am I holding it inside of me, or am I able to hold it in such a way that I'm able to bring it into a space externally? I think for starters, I'm really holding the inherent violence of power structures and the messy and violent work that it often is to try and shift structures of power, particularly those that concern resources and resourcing and the governance around resourcing, the work of trying to dismantle structures, intricate structures and systems, the work of trying to shift culture and mindsets and to break mental models, shifting away from accumulation and hoarding and the concentration of wealth and power, to contextualize what I'm talking about in philanthropy and broader resource mobilization. That work can feel like death by 1,000 paper cuts for any of us that are on the front lines or even further afield in trying to shift power, the direction and flow of power. I'm also holding a lot of grief, as I'm sure many of us are at the moment. There's the broader grief of, actively seeing the ramifications of colonization, colonialism, the colonial project in Palestine as it unfolds, and the grief of composting that which is no longer fit for purpose. We have to come to terms with the systems that we have, right? We know we have to dismantle them and build new ones, but the resistance and the violence often comes, from my experience, the resistance comes from the realization, the acknowledgement that we have to compost these structures. And there is a grief that comes with that. And if that grief isn't acknowledged and we're not able to have a real conversation about that, it can manifest in some deeply problematic and deeply violent ways. And so that grief piece is so key, like before we really activate the work of birthing the new. So I'm really holding the idea of grief and the idea of composting and what that looks like in my practice, and how I rehearse that and actively participate with the process of grief. And finally, I think really a question, more particularly this week, that I've been holding is, what is solidarity as practice? Like, what does it mean to be in solidarity with communities and social movements? What does it mean to be in solidarity with the Palestinian struggle at this time? And I think what I mean by that is, what are the conditions that need to be present internally? So in me, in my psyche, in my heart, in my relationships. I have a friend that I was having a conversation with, and we were talking a lot about looking at the personal, the interpersonal, and the systemic, and how things manifest throughout that continuum. So what does it mean for me personally to be in solidarity with communities and social movements? What's the posture of my heart when I'm considering solidarity, like the question of solidarity, and what that means for me? What do I need to deny myself? What do I need to give up? And where are my edges, and to make peace with wherever I feel my edges are right now, even if it's not where I want to be. So those are some things that I'm holding at the moment. And I'm going to pass over to Vanessa.
Oh, why do I have to go after you, Stephanie? Although going after any of you wouldn't be great. There's so much of what you said that I resonate deeply with, and thank you as ever for just articulating things in such a compelling and clear way. What am I holding right now? I think I'm holding frustration, like Stephanie has named, and anger, actually. I'm really, I'm not going to swear because it's a Sunday, but I'm really eked off with philanthropy, and I feel like I always am, but particularly over the last few weeks. Philanthropy really lauds itself as this kind of do-good entity serving social justice and healing the world and yada, yada, yada. And yet the biggest foundations have been largely silent on Sudan, where thousands have been killed or displaced, or have quibbled about the complications and nuances of calling a spade and calling out the injustices in Gaza. Philanthropy just hasn't been good enough, and it hasn't moved fast enough. And this always happens, but it's angering at this moment. And I think it's so sobering, because you just see how racialized it is. We have moved the slowest when it has been Black and brown bodies brutalized and murdered. And I wish that we navigated a sector that saw the humanity in both Ukrainian and Palestinian children, to be honest. How can we, rehearse freedoms if the resources to create these conditions arrive months later, if at all? So I'm really holding that anger. Conversely, because we're multifaceted humans, I'm also holding a lot of joy. I've spent the last week with fantastic women at the Black Feminist Fund for our staff retreat. And I'm just nourished and encouraged by the fact that the world does not care about us. The world does not care about Black women and gender expansive people. The world does not care about brown women and gender expansive people. However, we organize and we get shit done. So I'm sorry, you get things done. So I'm frustrated at philanthropy, but I'm nourished by my skin folk and my kinfolk. I am going to pass it to you, Derek.
So much in there. So I think first, like something you said, Stephanie, just completely resonated, which was, what does solidarity really mean in the context of the work that we do? We often say we're not philanthropy advisors, we're solidarity advisors, because the work we're doing is not simply around moving money, but trying to move people towards more common political goals, and we know that takes lots of unlearning. We know that takes, you know, us learning along the way, because it's not like we are the font of all knowledge and everything, but at least trying to move people in a very, very different direction to say, yes, we want you to give up the money, we want you to give back the money, you know, not to give, we want you to give back the money, right? There's an important distinction. But to give back the money, you've got to understand the context of how that money has been accumulated. But then you're also in a system which is where you are dependent on those same sources to be able to pay for food and water, you know, to pay for the house that you're in. And one of the things that you're always in conflict with is, you know, you are trying to dismantle or disrupt at whatever end of the spectrum it is, the system that is still trying to resource your livelihood and stuff. So that thing around solidarity and the parameters around it, it is a practice. It is a practice, because the conversations that I'm continually having is around those parameters. It's around those boundaries. It's around where you sit in that spectrum of extraction, being in this space called philanthropy, which, and I'm going to misquote this probably, but what Chris Rock said about America, where he said that line around America is like that that person that pays for your tuition fees but abused you, right? That's philanthropy. You know, that's where it sits. And it also sits in a place where it really devalues Black and brown bodies. And we can see that in terms of its inability to give up power to us, its inability to acknowledge where its wealth goes to, its inability to acknowledge how its money is invested. I can tell you this, if you really want to know, forget all of the statements that funders put out. If you really want to know what's going on, speak to minoritized people within those institutions. Let them tell you, right? Because when they tell you, then you know what's really going on. You know, so for me, the question of solidarity is a big one. It's a heavy one, a heavy, heavy one, being in this work and being in this space. Safety as well, and what does that look like for us, is really heavy, because the whole industry of philanthropy advice, the whole of it is based on creating layers and layers of safety around wealthy people. You know, my people's not changing if that is the basis through which that's not a change model for our communities. It's to create safety around that. So, you know, there is also that thing around how do you do this work while being accountable to communities, but also ensuring that their safety is not compromised in any of the work that you're doing. And then how do you challenge those in those spaces? Because we know the game, right? We know the game. I know that there's been plenty of people that have, at various talks I've done and various other things, have tried to quieten me and have tried to say, you can't say that. Oh, Derek, if you come across that way, then this person's not going to work with you. Or Derek, you can't say this, you can't say that. And it's like, I can say it, right? And maybe the person that you feel will not listen is not going to work with me. That's fine, because they're not going to resource my community anyway. And all you're doing by telling me not to say it is you haven't worked out how to monetize me or my knowledge yet. When you found out how to monetize my knowledge, then you will turn around in 4 or 5 years' time and say, oh, we'll advise our advisors on this, right? We'll do this, right? Cool. What would I be doing in the interim? Oh my God, my business has to survive. So you have that question of, do I compromise, or do I just go out and say the same said message that I need to say? And what we have seen historically over the years is that the ones that have compromised have many years later might have survived for 5 or 6 years, only to be told by those same powers that have monetized it, you're not radical enough, or why did you compromise, or why did you do that? Or then you find other people that don't compromise who end up on the outside and on the whatever. What's the common factor? The common factor is that none of that power has been given up, and safety has been created around those that have wealth, power, and privilege. Either route that you take is not a winning route for us. So that concept of safety and how we redefine safety for me is something that I'm really, really holding in all of the work that I do. And then the final thing, which is the joy piece, is just a joy piece around one, movement building and the power of that to change the narrative and mobilize people. And I think we've seen that over the last few weeks. And just some statistic that I saw recently, which said like Caribbean people or heritage people is less than 0.56% of the world globally. Would you ever think that what's come out of the Caribbean is 0.56 of influence on the world today? You're damn right philanthropy is going to be scared of us because we are not 0.56 in terms of influence. So that part of me, I always think about it. I always think, oh, yo, that's scary, because if you know, say, what type of influence that we've had across the globe with that little percentage, then yeah, it's a scary thing to rebalance power. But you know what? If we move, everyone moves.
Derek, you need to pass this
Who
on.
do I pass on to? Rebecca.
Thank you. I guess I'm holding the contradictions that others are holding. So I've been feeling such extreme exhaustion, I think, and overwhelm, and seeing like unprecedented levels of overwhelm amongst kind of peers and colleagues. And we've been working a lot with NKIM and Defo, and really beginning to be comfortable recognizing and calling it what it is, trauma. And definitions of trauma that we use are just too much, too fast, or too little for too long. And that sounds like what we've been living through for a long time. And I'm seeing it, and I can see it now very clearly myself, but also in our work, that what happens when we traumatize, we like disconnect and we collapse, and we play out on each other, and we like curtail all the possibility. And that's felt really present over the last period, and really present for me. So been doing a lot of work to really feel into that and recognize that, but also then to work out, how do I move beyond that? And I think Vanessa's phrase about organizing and getting shit done, reversing freedoms, has been that, and it's been that light for us and for me, I think, because it's seeing that you need to have awareness of your own state. You need to know what you're in, but you can then choose to be in a different state, choose to be in a state of imagination, choose to be in a state of connection, and seeing people really come together, really getting through all the bumps and the bruises and the conflict, and recognizing that actually we're in this together. We can only imagine together. And it's been like lightening up, and it brought me so much joy, and so much possibility that I just wasn't feeling. And I think there's been something around the activism and the connection, and coupled with the feeling of hopelessness, also feeling of absolute power and resource grounded within our community, but actually not relying on others, but in doing it together and building together, and recognizing that there is a baton, there is a line that actually, when you are tired, when you are overwhelmed, being able to put it down and pass it on. And that has just really been such a joy to me over the last period, and I hope that feeling is something that we can work on, and that we can rehearsing freedoms can live beyond the idea of a festival, that it can be something that we all take into our organizing and our activism, particularly in the next few months where it's going to be so urgent and so necessary. All right.
Thanks, Rebecca. Oh gosh, yo. Oh, like I was taking notes and finger snapping and moving shoulders and like all of that as each of you were speaking. I think like everybody in this space, and you know, more broadly, like I'm holding such a grief, like, and I feel like I was born into grief. I feel like to be Black, to come from a Caribbean experience of hybridity, and to be a product of colonization in those ways, is to be born into complexity and grief, and like the crossroads, as I like to call it, and that thing of having to hold multiple realities all the time. And over the last few weeks, I've been saying to people, I feel grief soaked, and some of that is deeply personal in terms of my own kind of immediate realities, and some of that is like literally like what the hell, what the actual hell is going in, like really. And so feeling full in many ways of that, and also feeling the rage, like the anger, like, Vanessa, you spoke about anger, like I'm vexed. And sometimes the thing that is the vexation and the rage is really the depth of overwhelm and disappointment and frustration and grief, like the grief, moving between the grief and the rage all the time. And there's this kind of academic concept which is rooted in like human reality called necropolitics, like who do we let die? Like who do we let die? And I'm so clear that as a kind of global community, like we need to be in a conversation all the time about who are we willing to let die? What does that mean in terms of, Sudan, Rojava, Haiti, Palestine, DRC? What does that mean in terms of, Black and brown bodies on this soil and other soil? What does it mean in terms of disability injustice? What does it mean in terms of just like intersectional oppression, full stop? What does it mean to be like a Black lesbian living in this time? What does it mean to be a Black trans woman living, like literally just the scale of and the interconnectedness of like this war on human life. And I don't mean war like, because sometimes when we say war, like it's like there's this equitable thing, but like this oppressive kind of structure, like this constant attack. And at the same time, and I really hear this like from you all, like I'm also holding joy and like lots of love, and I don't see my grandchildren enough, and they're very cute, and I'm like, I'm going to be moving closer to them soon, so I'm like, yes, I get to get squeezes and give squeezes, and I get to be in the attitude of the 6-year-old who has a lot of attitude, and so I'm holding that, and I'm also really holding joy, for like being in community, like rehearsing freedoms, Project Talawa, like we, that thing of like being little, of being small, like Derek, like your thing about that percentage. I'm like, yes, that's legit, that's literally us. We're like, oh yeah, we're tiny, but we are like, we're Talawa. We're like, yes, we're doing what we're doing, like from whatever, and we're doing it with our chest, and we're doing it with so much love, also with grief. Like we came into the work with the absolute honesty that like we're, like Project Talawa was founded and curated and continues to be created in radical Black feminist imagination and in grief, like always the two things, and in disappointment and in rage and in all of those things. And so yeah, that's what I'm holding right now, like just like all of it, and just gratitude for like being able to hang out with you lot. Like look at you all, like it's just amazing. I get to hang out with you lot on a Sunday afternoon. And normally somebody be like, you're gonna hang out, do work things on a Sunday afternoon. It's like, who wants to work on a Sunday afternoon? But I'm like, with this lot, yes, I'll take it. I will take it. So thank you all for the creativity, the magic, the reflection, the heart, all of it that you bring. The other prompt that we had was, and again, this is the time travel, like what we're holding, but also like, what should we be practicing? Like, what should we be practicing? what are we practicing? Like, what are the life affirming examples? Like, what are the things that like give us like hope? And like Mariam Kaba says, hope, hope is a discipline. So it's not the fluffiness of hope, it's that concrete hope. Like, so what should we be practicing right now? Vanessa, I'm gonna start off with you this time, sis. Just, to take us on a journey around how we be in practice.
Thanks, Marai. And I'm echoing you, like Sunday working, anyone who knows me knows that I've become very good at being a nap minister and having my boundaries. But Sunday and being in conversation with you guys, absolutely here for it. What should we be practicing? And I gave everyone the warning that I've been reading a lot of things recently. I'm such a book nerd, and I know that the written word is not the only way we can get information, but it's one of the ways that I like to get information. Anyway, I was reading a really interesting article, and the premise was, what if the way we respond to the crisis is part of the crisis? And I just thought, damn, what a starter. And it's really in line with lots of my kind of reflections on philanthropy this year and for a while actually. The author bio, he encourages us all to seek a new paradigm, one that embraces newness, awkwardness, fun, and play. And that's already something that has come up so many times in this conversation, which is why these people are my people. This viewpoint isn't linear, and it's not necessarily a nice, tidy 10-year strategy or theory of change or plan, which is really uncomfortable for the Eurocentric colonial ways that we're told is professional, productive. But like, this isn't working. If theory of changes were doing anything, we wouldn't be all talking about the grief and frustration that we have today. Like, problems would be done, philanthropy would be over, we'd be living our best lives, not talking about things that we've been talking about forever. So it's not working. And the article closes with, the way isn't forward, it's awkward. And when I read that, my thoughts then, see how my mind works, then went to Lankelly Chase and their plans to kind of spend out their endowment, and reading lots of things. And something that Julian, the chief exec, said was, and I thought it was really powerful, and I don't give white men their flowers ever, but I'm gonna give it to Julian, because he said something along the lines of like, they're rebuilding something and they're not necessarily sure what that's going to look like or how that's going to be. How bold. Like, when have we ever heard a leader in philanthropy say they're doing something and they're not really sure what it's going to look like, or if it's going to work, or if it's going to fit in with the strategy or plan? Like, we just don't know. And I think, again, that speaks to the fact that we all know the current mode isn't working. Stephanie beautifully talks about composting and burying this dead thing. So we need to do something different. And yeah, I was really encouraged by hearing a leader of a foundation say that. And then again, I'll close, or no, I won't. I've got lots of things to say. But the next thing was another book that I was reading, Post-Capitalist Philanthropy by Al-Noor Lidder and Lynn Murphy. It's fantastic. This isn't free promo, like it's a fantastic book. And they say, let me find it. It is never questioned that the logic that created the meta crisis may not be the appropriate logic to address its consequences. It is never made explicit that perpetuating the existence of foundations may be doing more harm than good. It is never asked if the dying of the old may be necessary to midwife the birth of the new. And again, these are my people. Haven't we had Marai, Stephanie, everyone talk about being doulas, midwifing new things, not knowing that this was the quote that I was going to pull up? So yeah, these are my people. And then moving sideways again about what we're practicing. I've mentioned that I've joined the Black Feminist Fund, and something that they house is a network called Black Feminists in Philanthropy. And in a conversation a few months ago, people were irritated and peed off about the fact that no one in philanthropy seemed to care about Sudan. And it could have just been a moan conversation. We lament, we moan, we go back to our business. But out of that, they've organized and are about to move nearly $1 million to Black feminists organizing in Sudan and across the diaspora. So when I say that, like, we just do things for ourselves. We do things for ourselves. And that really, really, really encourages and inspires me. And we know that the revolution won't be funded equally. We can't pretend that money won't help enable the conditions that we need to burn all of this down. So I'm encouraged by that. I'm encouraged again, staying on the Black Feminist Fund trend. Something that we all say in the panels that we're in is, we need sustained investment, long-term funding. Whether people are doing it, I don't know, but as Black feminists, we're doing it. So the Black Feminist Fund are funding Black feminist organizers in 28 countries, the majority in the global majority. Just take a moment for that. And more than that, like the majority of these funds are over 8 years. When does that ever happen? When does philanthropy go, this crisis is going to be solved by yesterday? Here's your 2-year grant. Oh, you haven't done it well. Naughty you. Here's your no cost extension. Like 8 years. And then bringing it down to the UK, the Baobab Foundation, of who I work with in another capacity, have just or are in the process of giving grants to organizations and individuals over 5 years. Again, like when does that happen? We sit on these panels and we say that this is what philanthropy should be doing, and yes, it is, but we're actually all just modeling it in our day-to-day, which I think speaks even more volumes. And I promise I'm wrapping it up now, but I think a lot of us have touched on what it means to be in solidarity and be in community. Capitalism really forces us into this scarcity mindset. But as Black people, our lineage is of abundance and of collective. Like, we don't know this scarcity. We're abundance, we're collective. We know that there is enough for all of us and then some. So can we lean into that with our work, like, and actually work in solidarity with each other? Derek said this, but every single person on this call is moving in the spirit of abundance. Project Taloa, Marai, when Baobab needs stuff, Marai is there. Stephanie, Good Ancestor Movement, like when we need stuff, Stephanie is there. Derek, the amount of times I'm on LinkedIn or just scrolling and Derek is mentioning me or bringing up another Black woman, like we're working in community. We're not in competition with each other. We're not trying to be the only Black people in the space. Like, these are my people. So I just want to pause by saying money, 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 yes. Long-term investments, yes. But like, can we move with the spirit of abundance and just be in community with each other? Derek, over to you.
I don't know how to follow that at all. But the thing that struck me when you were talking, one, just how absurd the world of philanthropy is, right? It is really absurd that people give away so little of their money and don't talk about it. It's so absurd that we know how long it takes for movement building to move into spaces of political change and how many years that takes, yet we give away 2 to 3 year funding. It was not ever built for us to succeed or to transform or to change. And I think that piece around really getting people to understand that philanthropy as its institutional practice, not the original meaning of the word, as its institutional practice, has not been set up to really transform, right? It doesn't exist in that way. So we just need to get that right. And it certainly wasn't in existence to help Black and brown folks be in the lead of transforming. So we just need to just put that down on paper and really just kind of inspect that, because the conversations that we're having now, the conversations that my predecessors were having 10 years ago, 20 years ago, 30 years ago, right? This isn't anything new in terms of the space that this is. So that piece around the absolute absurdity and the games that people play is really important. The other thing that I say is, it's great when you quoted about Julian and, you know, what will be in the imagination. So, you know, but fund the Black imagination. That's what I say. There's one thing about talking about whether you will fund the unknown or the future. What I don't really see is that money going to Black and brown people who are imagining a new future, that are creating alternative economic models, that are absolutely being able to walk in. And we know this, we know there are people that are able to take some of the narrative that each one of us have said publicly and walk into a funder and quite literally walk out with a 50 grand check, 100 grand check, or a big piece of money to think, right? That happens, and that happens all of the time. So it's like, yo, it's cool to get to that point of imagination, and I absolutely believe in that. But I'm also saying, you know what? There are a whole bunch of people that have been working on this for years and years and years who have not been given the space to be able to do that. And to the point of conversations that Stephanie and I have had over the years, etc., this thing around, we need money to create the capacity to build power outside of these structures, right? That's what we need. And that takes time, because we are operating in a spirit of complete transition. And we are also operating in a system that is not in any way, shape, or form interested in giving up any power to us. So if you do want to resource the capacity for us to build outside of our existing systems. So that thing around practicing, I used to say this to my teams, you know, when I was working in philanthropy, was if you get to, and this isn't hugely profound, but if you get to a Friday afternoon, think about all of the meetings that you've had during the course of the week. And if the majority of those meetings are with people internally, you know, they are bureaucratic meetings, or they're meetings with, I don't know, funding panels or various other things that you get caught up in, then there's something seriously wrong. Because the time that you're meant to be spending in terms of the meetings that you're having, it should be with the people that you feel that you are going to be in solidarity with, or the communities that you are a part of, right? And so I always used to say that. I always used to say, what does it look like? If you, and I know I've worked in big bureaucratic structures where if you don't mind, if you're not mindful of that, by the end of the week, you'll realize that you have not stepped off of your desk and you've just sat in the same detention center wall sort of funding decorated walls and meeting rooms over and over again, and that's been your week. That is not liberatory, right? There is nothing in that practice if you're being in those spaces all of the time, and if you're not mindful of who you're interacting with and the nature of those conversations, if you're not intentional about trying to switch that, then your mind, that practice in your mind is not going to be there. And that doesn't mean that you should suddenly start going out and going into calling up community groups and saying, yeah, I need to spend 2 hours with you, man, and just let's break bread. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying about who are you in relationship with, right? And are you legitimately ensuring that in your practice that you're spending time with the right people, right? And I know I don't always practice this myself. I'm trying to be better, but it was just something that I felt like I needed to be really intentional about. And then just another thing, because I'm just riffing a little bit, you know, I always come back to this thing about the revolution will be sketched, it will not be streamed. So in terms of moving money, right, it's really around, is that the answer to the problems? No, not necessarily. But who are the people that can get to those that are sketching? Because we know that the whole system, the whole NGOization of this world is streaming, jumping on whatever bandwagon's left with all of the power and all of that. And what we know is that our communities are sketching. And that's where change really happens. So who are the people that can resource in a particular way? To me, it really is not that hard. And I say that really, really, you know, if you know the people that are doing the work, that have done the work, then you're seriously not sitting there thinking, yo, I need to create this theory of change. I need to create this framework. I need to create this. I need to create that. No, you're just like, yo, I'm going to move money. You know why? Because I move from at the speed of trust, right? And you know people that have done the work and you get the money to them. So there is also just a piece here around, like when we talk about the revolution will not be funded, I completely agree with that. But there is just a piece here that says, you know what the Black Feminist Fund have done, because of who they are, the proximity and being able to recognize this is a global struggle and not a kind of as a colonial project as we have with most funders, and that we are all interdependent, means that they've been able to do it in the right way for a long period of time and essentially do the things that every funder with way more resource than any of us in this room keep telling us that you can't do. Of course you can do it. And we're going to keep telling you that you can do it. And we're going to keep telling you, we're going to keep telling you, because, at some point, it's like we completely understand the game, and we completely understand that game, that there are people that perhaps are going to be watching this back, taking down their notes furiously and trying to write this in their framework. And then they'll make the call and say, boy, we want you to come around the table, our table. And it's like, no, the thing that we're saying is about, you have to come to our table if you're really working in solidarity with us, not taking this stuff, monetizing it, and then saying you should be grateful to have a seat around the table. But to be able to do that, you have to know who you're in community with, and spending that time with the people that give you that joy, the people that support you, the people that can sit in silence with you. You know what I'm saying? Just sometimes you're just in a space and you're sitting in silence for a period of time. That's the little something I'm trying to keep practicing, and not always successfully, but just a little bit. I keep forgetting to hand it over, don't I? So, Rebecca.
Hold on one sec. Sis, I'm just thinking, do we need to take a break? Would this be a good point to take a break before? How are folks feeling? Could we do with a break, or?
Yeah.
Rebecca, what do you think?
Yeah, should we take 10 minutes and then we'll pick it up with
and then
what
we
we're
can
practicing.
So that the rest of us, and then how does that? We're good. Beautiful.
Brilliant.
So back at past. Awesome. Thank you, beloveds.
See, they've hurt you deep inside, and they bruise your soul, and they've burnt you into oblivion, pulling you down to hate. I'll choose to say, I'll see no evil. Hear no evil, I'll feel no evil, fear no evil, I'll taste no evil, fear no evil, I'll taste no evil, no evil, no evil, no evil, no evil. See, they've got you by your throat, feeding your head with lies, and they've burnt you into oblivion, pulling you down to hate. I'll choose to say, I'll see no evil, taste no evil, still need to rest too. Black girl, I know how much it hurts to always prove your worth. They won't make it easy, but baby, believe me, your life is precious, and you'll be alright. Let's lay down for a while, they'll be just fine. It's okay, you can keep your magic to yourself, keep it tucked away. They'll have to find another wonder for today. You don't always have to be the one to save the world. It's okay, you can keep your magic to yourself, keep it tucked away. They'll have to find another wonder for today. You don't always have to be the one to save the world. You're always the one to save the world. And they never say thank you, girl. I love you. Good night. I love you. Good night. Good night.
Look at us all coming back early. See how people like to speak about Black people and time. We're just not on Chronos time. We're just on our own time. So 1 minute early. Greetings. Welcome back, family. So, oh God, that was so rich and beautiful. Rebecca, I believe Derek had bounced to you. So if you can move us through like what should we be practicing? What are we practicing? Like what are we rehearsing?
Right, I'm glad we had a break because I couldn't have followed that. That just like really like filled me with joy hearing you guys speak. And I think it's already been touched on. The stuff that I think I'm focusing on and that we're focusing on is really around resourcing capacity. Like we need to build capacity. We need to build the skills that are going to allow us to build a different future. And so for me, that's very much figuring out, what do people need to be present, to be able to be leaderful, to be able to build, to be able to imagine? What kind of healing infrastructure do people need? Not that I think people can be healed while we're under constant oppression, but I think people can be given some space and be given some choice, and creating enough room for people to have the choice to do that. But building capacity really means about helping people to have complexity, to sit with the difficult discussions, building conflict resolution models, building leadership, building space where we can be in these spaces where we can resource and support each other. There's just not enough of this, and this is what we need to be able to be in a place that will allow us to grow. So for me, it's very much around that. I think the other area is the investing in building infrastructure. If we want something different, then we need to build something different. We need to build the prototypes and evidence the prototypes. And it's not that they don't exist. I think they exist in small scales across all our communities. We know what mutual aid means. We know what care means. We see it all the time. But it's building them in a way that then can be taken and not replicated, because they need to be different and they need to be local, but that they can be taken elsewhere, that they can be built on. And it's building those models so that when the opportunity comes, we're able to run it and show that we've already done it, show that we're able to put models of care out, that we have different infrastructure. And I think that's what takes investment, and that's what the short-term projectization of funding never allows. It takes the time to develop the ideas. It takes the time to build them with community, to build them with colleagues, really the investment in the thinking before you even get to the building, and then the investment in the building and in the evidencing, not evidencing for funders or for evaluation frameworks, but evidencing so that you're being responsible to the community you're working with, so that it's actually doing what it's supposed to be doing. And then being able to adapt and iterate. So it's really about this investing in life-affirming infrastructure. It's a long-term investment. That's years. It's years for us to be able to build prototypes that can allow us to really meaningfully show something different and build when the opportunity comes. Stephanie?
There's so much that's been said that I think I'll probably build on with my own remarks, but just to follow on from what you were saying, Rebecca and Derek, in terms of capacity, one of the things that I've been sitting with, and I've done a lot of my learning from Decolonizing Economics, we're a collective strategists that are working to build a solidarity economy rooted in racial justice principles. So just bigging them up for just all the work that they've put out into the universe, and been fortunate enough to really learn from them and how they are organizing with communities and social movements. One of the things I've really understood from their work is like the value that isn't attributed to relational work and the relational healing, which is essential if we're going to try and resource and build self-governing structures that encompass or are able to hold complexity and nuance, and also like healing and the trauma that comes up. I love the idea of, I often talk about relational incontinence, actually, and like how many of the structures that we have today that are prevalent in philanthropy or other forms of resource mobilization structures that actually don't allow for the pace, the slowness that's needed to form deep relationships that afford the trust that's necessary to have healthy governance, to identify kind of root problems, to strive for consensus around decision making. And I'm just really conscious of the need to support the building of containers that hold relationship and the relational work sacred, because they're key to repair and healing. So wanting to make that explicit within a conversation about capacity, because it's not just about numbers and infrastructure. It's like, how does that infrastructure, what is it holding? What is it supporting? I wanted to also follow up with what Vanessa was talking about in terms of bringing up the conversation about spend down. Another person that I consider a teacher is Esther Stanford Zoze. And I don't know if we'll have a chance to share links and things afterwards, but there's an article that she wrote about sunrising and the idea of sunrising as a counter approach to spending down. So she talks about spending down being a really helpful starting point, but that it's an approach that has to be informed by the perspectives and needs of communities who've been dispossessed and denied access to funds held in endowments, and kind of speaks to a reparatory justice framework which seeks not just to close philanthropic institutions, but to transform them into conduits for restituting the resources that they developed from extractive models of plunder. And she says that these communities should be able to utilize the resources that originally belonged to them to rise like the sun. And so this process ought to be considered a sunrise rather than a sunset, which I think is such a powerful image, a sunrise. And so while the conversation and framing that is given by the phrase spend down, which to my mind points towards like the illegitimacy of continued wealth hoarding and excessive accumulation, particularly at this time that we find ourselves in, when it's imperative that resources flow back into communities who are bearing the brunt of increasing hostility on all sides geopolitically. So I wanted to kind of, bring that into the space as something that could and should be a life-affirming practice of sunrising. And also, a life-affirming practice would be to, it doesn't escape me that we need to decenter the dominant thinking that often gets in the way. Even those of us that are trying to, be the midwife, be the birthing doula, the dominant thinking that prevents us from acting on what communities say and have been saying for donkeys. And I want to point you to a resource that Zara Delilah prepared, which is it's resourcing communities. It's a toolkit for resourcing communities, and in that report she points to a number of different things which communities have told us and continue to tell us about their need to build sustainable infrastructure to enable a smooth and consistent movement of money. They talk about flexible core and long-term funding. They talk about accountable decision-making, so funders making sure that they have appropriate scrutiny within their selection processes, which can adopt an intersectional approach in making decisions about where funding goes and to whom, and encouraging us also to engage in continuous learning based on mutual trust. So really encourage you to look at that toolkit. And remember that actually it's the thinking is already out there, and although it's wonderful to come together and have conversations, I think we need to engage in that practice of looking back as well as looking forward and thinking what has already been said, what has already been given to us, and it mirrors a kind of ancestral practice as well, or the practice of looking for ancestral wisdom, like what has already been said, what are the gifts that have already been given to us that actually require us to adopt a different heart posture, to decenter a certain way of thinking, a colonial mindset, and a worldview that is contrary to bringing about just futures for all. I think I'm going to hand over back to Mare.
Thank you. Yes. All of that. So I'm just going to put in my two pennies worth in terms of like what we could be practicing. Just I'll say a little bit about Project Halawa and how we doing things. So I want to invite the deity of imperfection into the conversation, because really and truly, like that like for me, for us, there's a thing about dealing with and attending to the pressure that we sometimes feel to have this perfectly formed response to centuries of colonial oppression. Like we are somehow gonna be like, yeah, we have it sorted. And even like the thing about a conversation with community, and I want to kind of acknowledge or Sister Baljit Sandhu and the work around lived experience leadership. And like on one level, there's this thing about our expertise, but there is also the homogenizing of our wisdom. Like melanin folk are supposed to like all sound the same, behave the same, like have exactly the same response to multiple issues. Like when that is going on, when people are expecting us to be the same thing, it's more of white supremacy in action, right? So also just to say, there is no one way to be in the practice of moving money. Like there is no, you know, like, and again, like we're gonna come at this when we are practicing almost liberated approaches. There is expansiveness and room for the creativity around how we can do the work, right? One of the things that I really have observed over the years is this pretense of democracy with like open calls for funding. And I really want to just, Derek, I need to kind of, I've said this to so many people, but I need to say it to you on this call. When we were doing the scoping for Project Talawa, Derek was one of like having all of these conversations, community having all these conversations with like Black feminists, like, you know, movement folk, people operating in different spheres. And I was just like, I need to still speak to my brother Derek, because he's been out there doing the thing for however long. In Jamaican terms, they'd say he's been there from Wapikil, Philip, yeah? And got on the call with Derek, and it was in the middle of the pandemic. And so like it was Zoom, and we were like talking. And one of the things Derek said was like, please do not do open calls for, I don't know if you remember this, but it was almost like that thing we were talking about. And he was just like, just don't drop into the thing that is business as usual. And like you were listing the business as usual, and it was just like, you basically was just like, do your work. Don't go into like the thing that people do as standard. And it was such like, I really appreciated that, because it was such a kind of like, it's what folk had been telling us. Folk had been telling us that they didn't want to spend weeks laboring over an application or have 5 minutes to get this thing in by the deadline of midnight on a Friday, and actually have 100 people apply for the £5 or whatever, you know, and we didn't know what the thing would be, but that really supported us to think about stuff differently. And then I want to kind of speak to what that also means. Because of the level of corruption that happens in the philanthropic space, and I'm going to name it, I'm not talking about us, I'm talking about the philanthropy as an industry is like messed up, and it is corrupt. And I'm not talking about the thing of like moving money to us. I'm talking about like the white supremacist corrupt structures that are holding themselves in place. We are feeling such pressure to chat our business and to expose every little thing that we are doing. And I don't mean us as Project Tallow, I mean even just like as community resistors. And our communities are heavily surveilled, right? And so there is also something about how the narrative around risk, and Derek said the thing about safety at the beginning, the narratives around risk are forcing us to feel like there is no space for stealth. And I'm like, mate, this is guerrilla warfare. Stealth is necessary, right? Like there has to be a space for us to not have openness and transparency weaponized against our people, so that we are asking people to produce data, information, like all of those things using the business as usual structure, right? So one of the things I guess I'm asking us to be in practice around is interrogating the narratives around risk. Like really dealing with this idea of risk, because we know all of us on this call know what risk actually is. Yeah, all of us. And so when the philanthropic structures actually define risk in ways that feel abhorrent and incongruent to us, and we're having these responses in our bodies where we're going, what are you on about? What do you mean? Like, you think it's risky to move money to us? That's all. That's literally it. Like, I want us to be much more open and honest and like be like, no, we're not having it. Shut your mouth, innit? We are not going to be in a conversation with you where you tell us what risk is when we know what risk actually is, right? Because you're talking about risk as defined through defensible decisions that are in line with keeping the Charity Commission happy. That's what you're talking about. You're talking about risk as defined by retaining the philanthropic structure and not disrupting the thing too much. All right. So a little bit about Project Halawa. So I just want to acknowledge like the different lineages around this work, right? So I want to acknowledge Omari communities in Aotearoa who I sat with, Samoan families, Samoan community, African Caribbean elders. You know, I want to acknowledge the people in philanthropy who've been out there doing the thing, you know, Derek, Vanessa, like just all of the thing. I want to acknowledge that moment when RRJ came on the scene and had us feel like actually it was possible to do the thing. I want to acknowledge the movement spaces for Million Women Rise, you know, like just all of the things that gave birth to this kind of imagination. What we're doing in Project Halawa is we are our own social experiment, right? And moving money is part of what we do. It is not all that we do. Because, and Stephanie, this really is in line with what you spoke about. We are in the very slow, gentle practice of being in community together and of practicing what it is like to build a structure that actually allows us to trust and challenge and test. And, you know, bio, you know, Vanessa, you were talking about bio's work, bio Kamlafe, and bio always, you know, kind of draws on that Yoruba saying, like, life is urgent, slow down, right? And so, like, we took the decision to actually come into this with a pace that recognizes the global crisis we're in and the crisis that we're in as a planet, but also said, like, how, like, that thing of us being like that, we didn't want to be in that. So part of what we've done is if we decided not to be business as usual with Melanin, which is actually what we could have done if we wanted to just be a funding entity, we define ourselves as like a community space, a movement space that we're building. And what that allows us to do is it allows us to acknowledge all that it takes for us to be in practice with each other and for us to be in practice with community. We you know, we don't do open calls because we cannot afford to do that, and we cannot afford to put our communities through that. We reach out, and we ask folk to reach out, and we ask others to reach out, because what we didn't want to do is offer the pretense of something that we can't actually deliver on. We didn't want to do that. And that's one of the things that I guess an invitation is to figure out the balance and the tensions that we hold when we are moving money, when we are like, we need to be transparent, quote unquote, we need to be open, while at the same time setting people up with expectations that we know we cannot fulfill. Like, so there's something about us telling the truth about what is possible institutionally and structurally, instead of actually creating a dynamic of competition. Like, Vanessa, I loved what you said about abundance and Project Halawa. We are tiny and we live into abundance. We practice, we are there. We're like, this is who we are. We come with abundance. So that's my little piece. I am now gonna move us on, and like, so we got 25 minutes, people. We've got 25 minutes to deal with what we're dreaming, hoping, working towards. So like, no simple task then, yeah. This is the imagination space. This is the, you know, like the creative space, the dream space. This is the yeah, we know the system is holding us down, etc. But like, who could we be? Like, what we dreaming? What we hoping? Like, you know, in that space of, I love that, Stephanie, your organization is called Good Ancestor Movement, because I'm always like, what kind of ancestor do you want to be? So what is the world that we are like dreaming into and crafting for our people, for our communities, that we can call in now and be in that? And Derek, this time I'm going to start with you.
My answer to that probably is around the next generation, that they have that capacity. Like, when I think around some of the absolutely amazing people that should be getting 20-year grants, should be getting substantial resourcing, should be trusted and would be trusted if we all had the power. And we know that. It's them having that capacity to be able to make choices. And when I say make choices, I mean make choices personally as well as professionally, because we know what happens as well to our people. We get to a certain age, or get to my age, you get to like 50 or you get to 60 and you're still doing it and you're still hustling, and your side hustles are more than the actual thing you are getting paid for doing. And you're working, and all you're doing is working, and you're on that treadmill of working, and you don't know how to come out of it, right? And I say that personally because I'm completely in that cycle of crisis right now, of being on that wheel and not having quite worked this stuff out. So I learn from, you know, like Fazana teaches me, you know what I'm saying, and teaches me to slow down and teaches me to do things which I don't always listen to, but you know, because I'm stubborn and old. But it's that thing where we have to, at the very least, break that cycle. And I say this on a personal and professional level, because I started off saying I am a dad and I am a son, and someone that hasn't always been a good friend or been around, because I've just been running and hustling and running multiple different side hustles. So that bit alone that says we break that cycle, and that next generation, that when they are 45, 50, 55 years of age, that they have that capacity, to make the choices, capacity to move out if they want to have a couple of years that they might need to take time and all of that, right? When I'm talking about resourcing, that's what I'm resourcing those people that have visions that are greater than our world, and enabling them to have the capacity to make their choices both on a professional level and a personal level, and centering that in Black women. Forget to pass on again. I'm going to do Stephanie.
Thanks, Derek. When I think about how to answer this question, I didn't see your tattoo closely, Marai, but I have I guess an image of it in my mind's eye when I think about the 7 spirals. Yes, beautiful. And I feel like I can use that as an anchor, because I'm thinking about the 7 generations, and I'm also thinking about, you know, the shape of progress is not linear. The shape of progress is in that spiral, and sometimes it feels like we're going round and round in circles, and we're gaslighting ourselves, and you know, it feels just hectic. And I think being able to reflect on actually that is how we progress collectively, that it, you know, the shape of progress is not linear. I recently was at a global climate reparations strategy day, and with an organization called Taproot Earth, and they made us kind of do this exercise. And so they made us write it down on little yellow cards. I've got mine here. I have it at my on my workstation, just to kind of inspire me, really. And on it says, and this is something that they were encouraging us to think about, what could we see in 5 years' time? And I wrote down effective movement finance infrastructure models that are resourcing communities and are self-governed. And I think what I would add to that now is really to see an ecosystem of effective movement finance infrastructure models that aren't, I'm not talking about identikit models, but allowing each one in its fullest expression of itself and the community that it anchors, but to see that there is a network and that continuity of collectivism and being in community with one another, and just being able to resource an ecosystem of work, not just kind of like isolated interventions, which is often what I guess communities are forced into by virtue of the institutional philanthropy model. So that's what I'm dreaming of contributing to and being a birthing partner to. Vanessa.
Thanks, Stephanie. I can't believe this conversation's nearly coming to an end, and I've been just taking down notes of some of the things that you guys have been saying, and bars across the field. But what I'm particularly like zooming into is moving at the speed of trust. Like, Derek, can we get that on a t-shirt? Can that be like a sticker for laptops? Can we just put it everywhere? And a reminder that we need to make sure folks are coming for a seat at our table. We're not going to beg at anyone's table for crumbs. They're coming to our table, building prototypes. And then Stephanie, the beautiful, beautiful offerings you shared around Sunrise. And this is actually like, this isn't a negative or a bad thing. We're sunrising something which is so beautiful and has so much possibility. And on the kind of thinking of possibility, I know that I started by sharing my isms and frustrations with philanthropy, but I say that because I see the sunrise, I see the limitlessness of opportunities. And like I said, I've spent a week with my BFF colleagues, and I'm so gassed about the fact that I'm like paid to spend time with women who are just so kind, intelligent, and limitless. And I keep saying limitless because spirit of abundance, all of that jazz, but we're birthing something which doesn't have linear ceilings, limits. It doesn't have scarcity. It's such abundance. And my final quote, which you'll all be happy about, but I was reading something where the author said, they're asking us to imagine a reality where we only engage in activities that create the conditions for the emergence of beauty. And I just thought, damn, that's so beautiful. Like, this work is hard and slow and frustrating and irritating, but we are creating conditions for the emergence of beauty. How wonderful is that? So please don't mistake my anger, frustrations, or despair as despair, sorry, because I'm really, really charged up. Like, I'm plugged in, I'm getting to 100%, because I can see and I want us to be able to rehearse, reimagine, fall down, get it wrong, be a bit wonky, but enact together something that's just going to feel so righteous, so just. Philanthropy won't exist, labor will look completely different, all bodies will be respected, we are not commodities, and we just share the earth equitably. So yeah, that's what I'm dreaming of, and I'm sorry if it feels a bit up in the air or not specific enough, but we're sunrising. How can I tell you what this glorious, beautiful space is going to look like? I just know it's not going to feel like this. Derek, over to you.
No, I've already spoken, but I was just going to say that piece is not ambiguous about philanthropy in the state that it's in should not exist. And that's the truth. So yeah.
I knew you had a little other nugget. So Rebecca, now for you.
Where do I go after that? I'm holding that. I'm holding sunrise. I'm holding ecosystems. I think I'm holding the strength that comes from being in community. So just the joy that's been being on this call and what it's able to give you. And if we could just replicate that and do more of it, like the power that we would have to change things. And so yeah, that's it for me. It's how do we, not even how, we are going to, we will, we want to, we must come together and figure out what ecosystem looks like, what ecosystem really looks like, how we get over the bumps and the bruises, and how we build and grow together, but also see all our skills and capacities as being connected, and stagger the game so that we're not getting to the stage that Derek talked about where we're burnt out. And seeing some of this and just seeing what a 2-hour conversation can do, it's so possible. And it's just about believing into those possibilities, I think.
Belly full, belly full. Thank you all so much. I think if I think about what I'm dreaming, what I'm hoping, what I know is really alive in the Project Halawa space, it's always about collective liberation, always. And it's not a collective liberation that is some future crafted where we are all the same. This is not like this ableist version of the future. This is not like some like white supremacist version of the future. This is literally, we get to show up and be safe and well and alive and experience just realities and joy and, you know, like all of that beauty and magic and mystery. We are able to be in that future and call that future into now. I think about uncertainty very much from the place of the transatlantic journey, like the journey across the ocean, the journey that my ancestors, that many of our ancestors had to endure. And I think about how filled that journey, like how that experience of uncertainty as terror. And I think about uncertainty as possibility, like those of us who have emerged from the plantation, have emerged from the depths of that particular those experiences, those who are still living on land that is occupied, just all of these different things, and or the need for us to remain in the dream state all the time while also being in survival mode. And I learned the practice of imagination as a survivor. So I learned imagination through, not just through good moments or lovely moments, but I learned the practice of imagination through moments of pain. And what I am always grappling with and inviting folk into is, like, where it's possible, the thing that people sometimes describe as disassociation is actually like our imagination taking us into a different space in order to be in a different place, right? And so how can we harness the beautiful power of that while at the same time not valorizing pain? I'm not saying that we need to be going through shit in order to imagine, but something about honoring that even in this moment where there is such grief and pain, that like we have borne witness today to also the power of imagination and the gift that that brings us. So like I'm always dreaming. I don't know what's gonna show up, but like I'm here for trying out shit with you lot, man. I'm like, if as long as you lot are here, then like I'm like, we are rolling ancestors deep and community deep, and that's the richness and the beauty of all that it is. And that, quite frankly, is what it takes to be Talawa, because people will tell you that you're little and you're like, yeah, but I'm strong like hell. Watch me. So deep gratitude for this conversation. What I don't know is whether, so Fazana has offered to kind of to ground us out, but I wanted to check, Rebecca, what did anybody because I don't even know if we have people online, because we've just been like, did anything? Because this weird like bubble, and also it's Guy Fawkes Day, so people are off doing things like anyway. So like we're in this weird bubble where I'm like, did anybody have a question? Like, is there anybody even watching this on YouTube? Are we just like doing like or hanging out and loving? Rebecca, do you know if anything came through?
I don't know. I can't see YouTube either.
Okay.
No questions, but a lot of love, Alex.
Oh, that's beautiful. And Alex, can we please, if possible, shout out to the crew, like love from us, like in the chat, because we can't be in the chat, but yeah. So just like big gratitude to everybody for joining us. For joining us. Okay. Any last words before Fazana leads us out? Any like pearl of wisdom. My mom was called Pearl, so I'm here for any pearls of wisdom. She was a black pearl, yeah. So any black pearls of wisdom that you lot want to just drop before Fazana leads us out? Derek, go on.
Just a sort of quick quote from June Jordan when she was trying to do that skyrise for Harlem in the 60s, and she spoke when she was trying to redesign Harlem at that particular point about communities being able to birth their own reality, and that for me is what so much of this is about.
Love that. And we Auntie June every time. Auntie June, Auntie Audrey, Auntie Belle, yeah, all of them. Anyone else? Vanessa, Stephanie, Rebecca, any last black pearls?
I don't know if it's a pearl, but I'm so appreciative of sharing space with you guys. I'm not using words lightly when I say that you inspire, nourish, encourage, keep me in check, like hold me accountable. So it's not a pearl, but thank you. And I know that this world and this sector extracts and takes a lot of your batteries, but thank you for always being so generous with everything to me.
Thank you, Stephanie.
I think it's more, yeah, again, thank you for all the love and all the labor that you put out there for us and for, you know, future generations, just to echo what Vanessa was saying. And also just to encourage folk that, you know, it's often in the place where I feel I'm cracked open that actually it opens up a more expansive space for possibilities and future realities, and opens up a space for dreaming and healing. And even though it doesn't feel great to be cracked open, you know, so be holding the grief and holding the pain, actually we know that, you know, even at this time we've had such a generative conversation that is birthing the future as we speak.
Stephanie. Rebecca?
Just deep gratitude for me. I agree with Stephanie that it is that place of being broken open where you also find possibility, but it's also the coming together when you're exhausted and then leaving feeling full and leaving for the possibility. So I'm just really internally grateful.
Project Hallowell, we say that we're birthing something that isn't meant to exist. That was a bar from our sister Dorette Jones, and you know, or Sister Shay says Black women are my ministry, you know. And what for me, I've had the feeling of, and I've witnessed today, is us on a Sunday and I say this and I'm not religious, being in church, because this is like the joy and the kind of the spirit of like being in community. And this for me is a prayer. This is a prayer to all that we can be, and to our hopes, to our dreams, to the possibility of liberation. And so deep gratitude to each of you for all that you are, all for the people that hold you, to have you be in the work, for the people that back you, and for all the dreamers and troublemakers out there. Like, this is deep gratitude, ancestral and generations into the future. And with that, goodly sister Fazana, if you could come through and just like support us to, yeah, to go into the next phase of this day.
Firstly, I want to just thank you all. Like, my soul, I was like writing in the chat, my soul is shaking. There was so many moments I was like, snaps, all the snaps. There was so much I personally needed to hear. So thank you. And also for your courage. You touched on risk, and all of you are doing the bold and the brave work, and we see you. So thank you. And also thank you for your mentorship, for being peers, and also I have the joy of having to get to share leadership with Rebecca. So just, it's, yeah, thank you. That's what I'm saying. Lots and lots of gratitude. For this kind of closing out practice, what I'm going to invite you to do is just take one hand and place it on the opposite shoulder. If touch doesn't feel comfortable or supportive today, you can hover a hand on the opposite shoulder. And equally, if it's not accessible or that's just not what you want to do, you can visualize a color or a light over that shoulder. And what we're going to do are arm sweeps, which often we do quite intuitively, and it can be quite soothing for us, especially when there's lots of stress. But what it supports us to do is feel our body's boundary, have a bit of a container. So one of our practitioners, Lana Homeri, loves to start this practice from the heart space. So if you want to do it from the heart space and move along up to your shoulder, give your shoulder a little squeeze, knowing that so many people are holding you. And then moving down the arm. And you might want to squeeze the arm and just adjusting to pressure and pace in a way that feels supportive for you. And just noticing any sensations. And if there's any discomfort, you can stop. And moving along to the other arm, giving yourself a little squeeze. You might also want to start from the heart space. Just feeling the body's container, a felt sense of boundary of where we begin and where we end, especially as we practice deepening in community and solidarity. And don't forget your fingers. We always forget the fingers. And you can shake out anything you don't want to take into the rest of your day. I'm going to hand to Marai or Rebecca for any closing points.
To all of us.
All of you. Oh, okay.
Thank you, sis. Thanks, Fazana. Thank you. And I just want to offer big gratitude to the Healing Justice family for curating in community in the way that you have done, and for the love and care that you all are bringing. Yes, so Vanessa's just put a thing in the chat. Do we want to just bring that through?
Yeah,
Who was gonna...
just looking for the link.
Yeah.
Yeah, so Fazana, oh, actually it's in the chat, so let me just click on that. Sorry, guys.
I am. Do you want me to just?
Yeah, Fazana, do you want to come in and just?
Sure. So there is for any funders on the call, there's a funder accountability session that's being held on November the 8th by the Rawa Fund, which is a Palestinian fund. So if you are interested in joining that link, and specifically it's around the ways in which funders are policing or disciplining folks who are speaking out around Palestine. So if you are interested in joining this conversation, this Zoom conversation, then send us an email, and we're going to put that in the chat. And then we can send you the link. And that's being held by the Rawa Foundation, which is a Palestinian participatory fund. So.
Thank you. Thanks, sis. So yeah, huge gratitude to HJL, huge gratitude to this community of amazing human beings. Rebecca, anything that you want to come in with?
No. I just want to thank the interpreters, Nana, Ya, and Darren, for all their work and keeping up with us in the conversation, and also on tech, Richard, Fazana, and Alex. Thank you so much.
Beautiful. That's it, people. Like, y'all can go and have your dinner now. Blessings and love. Thank you so much.